Hi, this is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Shoe. The Right Shoe is a podcast. It's about all things strange and unusual, mostly strange and unusual deaths. I try to tie them into something a little Philadelphia. Today we have a treat because I got a whole bunch of stuff I want to talk about. I'm already looking into I usually do this every 2 weeks, put one out. I try for every week, but it's tricky because I do a lot of research. Today is going to be a hodgepodge. I will call it my South Street edition. Now, what ties into this is Danielle, Imbo, Richard Petrone, which I know all professed crime lovers like myself all know about the Petrone Imbo case, everybody. But what they don't know is how it ties into this Amber Long case. And at the end, just for a little postscript, I am going to talk about Soo Ya Kim. I'm putting her in there because it's a tiny one that I can speak about it quickly, and doesn't really fit with I usually like to fit everything together. But I think her death is important because it's extremely mysterious. And I always felt bad for her husband. It was an Unsolved Mysteries episode, which I am such an Unsolved Mysteries junkie. I love Robert Stack. He's the man. Nobody could ever come close to him. Love him, love him, love him. Okay, so, there's Peter Thomas from Forensic Files, an amazing announcer, but, you had Robert Stack with the coat, and he was the man. Okay, so we're going to start with South Street. South Street is a place in Philadelphia. It's originally named Cedar Street. It became I think it was I'm not sure when it blossomed. Philadelphia Encyclopedia I'm just going to read just a little small history lesson. South Street, also known as Cedar Street back then, was the original southern boundary of William Penn's plan for Philadelphia. In the 18th century, it was a liminal space between an increasingly cosmopolitan central city and rural townships to the south. Farmers came to hawk their wares at the New Market, which stood on today's Head House Square at 2nd and South Streets. Southwark Theater, Philadelphia's first, was built on the southern side of the street, since Quaker doctrine forbid live performances within Philadelphia's proper. Indeed, over the next 300 years, South Street would continue to attract those who sought to live beyond the reach of Quaker-influenced city governance. So apparently South Street was the punk of even back then. Back in the way days. And what happened is over time, it said that African American immigrants seemed to really be into the street, open air markets. It developed. Also, Eastern European Jews streamed through this station. The Washington Avenue Immigration Station, which is the Pennsylvania Railroad, in the 1870s. So it was kind of the it place to be. In 1963, the R&B group, the Orleans, christened South Street the hippest street in town, a homage to the black hipsters who flocked to South Street's nightclubs and cruised their cars up and down the strip. Throughout this era, popular novels like William Gardner Smith's South Street depicted it as a contact zone, a place where different ethnicities and social classes interacted. South Street was the place where the working and middle classes met. All of the intermingling translated into excitement. As one of Smith's characters remarked, there was life in the air of South Street. So that's amazing. That was where the Theater of the Living Arts, the TLA, started in 1964. And it really was the migration for artists, the burgeoning counterculture. And nothing was more counterculture than when punk rock came in around 78. 79. It was fast and as furious as punk rock itself. It went up, spiked, and then died quickly. I was punk rock in around 84 and 85. That was when it was, because by 86 it was pretty much dead. But during the 84 to 85th time span, it was where I loved. There was a store called Zipperhead, it's still the epitome of South Street. That's what makes South Street, Zipperhead. And there was a place called Skins, which I liked even better. I think I'm pretty sure Zipperhead was at 4th and South. Skins would be between 4th and 3rd. It was remarkable. The Tower Records was there. So South Street, even now, right now we're in the middle of the COVID-19 virus, but on a normal day, South Street is still, on a Saturday night, I would take the kids, we would walk, there's condemnation, they would actually let the kids in there, certain spots they wouldn't be allowed, but they would just giggle at the stuff there, and condemnation is still a draw. There's a lot of Asian, stores with, those cute Asian purses. I'm a particular fan of Japan. I think Japan seems to be at the forefront of fashion sometimes. If you ever watch Girls, that HBO show, there's one part where Shoshana goes to Japan, and it's remarkable. The one of the characters says, quote, "I feel like I'm in Katy Perry's vagina," unquote, and it is a great scene, and it really shows you how Japan really does have an amazing look to it. So anyway, that being said, South Street in 1985 was the shit for me. I loved it. I would go down there all hours of the night. As I've told you previously, my L rides, I would get right off. I would get off at 8th and Market where the gallery was. I would walk up, whoever I was best friends with at the time would come with me, and we would just hang on South Street and look, get ideas, because I was so into punk rock. Safety pin, I rip all my clothes open and then safety pin them back together, the leather jackets, the mohawks. I pierced my nose, I dyed my hair all kinds of colors. When Manic Panic, the preferred dye of our time, had some kicking colors. Manic Panic is a little whitewashed now, but back then, oh my gosh, the colors were nuts. I remember I dyed my hair nuclear yellow, and I got in a lot of trouble at school. And then I pierced my nose, and you just didn't do things like that back then. So I was just a little troublemaker, wasn't I? So anyway, South Street is great. There's been very much an evolution. I think the Black Banana, which was a gay club, was on South Street. Gosh, my dear old dad, rest in peace, Pops, because I can ask you anything. Sometimes I forget. But I just remember he used to talk about the Black Banana. There was the Copacabana. I think the Copacabana might still be there. I know there was a bar where that was. And there's Jim Steaks. But there's still that excitement. Even when you're driving down there, there's just an excitement to that street. So this was where we come to our first couple, our missing couple, Danielle Imbo and Richard Petrone. This story is unbelievable. It really, I've heard it many times. I've watched everything I can watch. I listen to other podcasts. It is truly one of those, it gets under your skin, this particular story, because there's no ending, and I don't think they're ever going to find out what happened to them. I really don't. You find that truck, you'll find what happened to them, but you're never going to find the truck. I just have unless they did, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Danielle Imbo and Richard Petrone were not even a couple. They were an on-again, off-again couple, had knew each other for like 20 years, the family, the Petrones and the Imbos. So it was that kind of thing. Like, the families had always known each other. They were both divorced, or Danielle was in the process. She was just getting a divorce. And I think that's why she broke up with Richard Petrone. They had known this family, and then one night they got together. There was just a spark all of a sudden. Even though they had known each other for all those years, this particular night they got together and they liked each other and they went out. Danielle, when the divorce went through, that's a painful experience. And I've known a lot of people who've gotten a divorce. Even if you're at the worst, oh my God, I can't stand him or her, it is a very crushing blow because you remember the good times. It just makes you question things. It's tough. Divorce is tough. And I think that's why she chose to break up with Richard Petrone. But on this particular night, It was February 19th, 2005. It was a cold night. Cold. Philadelphia winters can be devastatingly cold. We had a very mild winter this year, but some winters are freezing. And this night, I remember 2005 because that's the year I went to Germany. And it was cold that winter. So this night, they decide out of the blue, and this is important for what happened afterward, to go to Abilenes on South Street. It is not there anymore, but it was there for, just like other restaurants. Now, there's some restaurants that stay a long time, and then there's some restaurants like Downey's, I remember, was there forever, but then it closed. But this Abilenes, it was there, and it must have been there a couple years because they did have the yearly candlelight vigil there. On South Street, that's a good run. Things can sometimes just open and close very quickly. It's a rough street because the rent, very high. So they went to Abilenes that night and they hung out with Richard's friend Anthony. Anthony says that night there was nothing said that was out of the ordinary. Nobody looked worried. Nobody looked scared. There was nothing that struck anybody as bizarre. As they were leaving, they went there. I don't know what time they got there, but I know at 11:45 p.m. they both, Danielle and Richard, said, I think it's time for us to leave. They both wanted to get home to their son. She had a year-old son, if I'm not mistaken. I know he was very young at the time. And he had a 14-year-old daughter who now is in her 30s and has kids of her own. Because I remember her very upset on the news feed, which was devastating that she lost her father. So they, I always think about the families. It's crushing when I can't even imagine not knowing what happened to your loved ones. So they get up and they say they're going to go to get home to their sons and daughter. Anthony says, "Do you need a ride?" And Richard had pointed outside and said, "No, my truck's right there." And the way he spoke of it, it seemed like his truck was right out front. South Street's a busy place, even in the most coldest of nights. No matter what time, you're going to have somebody on that street. Now, they must have walked outside. They disappear into the thin air, never to be seen again. The next day, I know that her brother John went to the thing that alarmed them the most. Like, she missed her haircut appointment. They kept calling her phone. I think both families were calling both their phones, and it was going right to voicemail, which right off the bat, that's the worst. Nowadays, especially, nobody ever has their phone off. Or unless you're charging it, everyone has their cell phones on. It is scary to think that you're trying to get to these people and you're not getting anything in response from a person that normally, especially because of their kids, would immediately get back to them. So that was the first alarming thing. The second thing that happened that really sent the mom over the edge was when she said she tried to call Joe Imbo, the ex, the one that they just got a divorce. He came over with the son. John was there and he lied and he said, Danielle went with her sister. Something like that. He had made some sort of something up because he said he didn't want Joe to know she wasn't there. That was what alarmed the family the most because she would never be late for her son. But that's a peculiar thing because the fact that he lied to Joe makes me even more... I just get a little suspicious about this Joe Imbo. There's a few things. At one time, he had intercepted a call between Danielle and Richard, and he said, "Stay away from my wife." And then this thing happened where John, the brother, lies to him, which makes me think the guy was like a hothead, like he would have gotten pissed if she wasn't there. So that really strikes me. Because the only thing we have is that these people, as of now, these people are gone. So right off the bat, they know they're gone. John and the Petrone's father go around. They're driving in this truck. They drove for 13 hours. They drove down every bridge, and there's a lot more bridges than people think. There's the Walt Whitman, there's the Ben Franklin, the Betsy Ross, the Tacony, and then there's two faraway ones. There's the Burlington Bristol and the Commodore Barry. They would not have taken the Burlington Bristol or the Commodore Barry. It's way too far. The Tacony you really don't take unless you're from the Northeast, like myself, because it's close, it's tiny, and it's cheap. Always has been. Back then, it was probably $1, if that. The bigger bridges are more expensive. Now, the Betsy Ross, the Walt Whitman, that's the biggest of the bridges, and that you usually take to go on the shore. As a Philadelphian, that's the shore bridge. When I asked Homicide, that's the name I'm going to use, Homicide, for any questions I ask homicide detectives. Homicide told me, I said, what bridge would they have taken to get to Mount Laurel, which is where Danielle Imbo resided? They said Ben Franklin's the closest. So the Ben Franklin Bridge would be their most likely bridge. I thought it was the Betsy Ross, but they said no, the Ben Franklin's the closest. That would have probably been it, unless they got on 95 and went to the Walt Whitman would be my second guess. The weird thing is that okay, so they disappear. They are gone. Now, at this point, they know they're gone. The family has looked for them for 13 hours. Panic is setting in. There's nobody's answer. There's not even nothing on their cell phones. It's gone right to voicemail. What do you think that means? Their cell phones were either destroyed, underwater, or something terrible. They wouldn't have. Did they take off? No way in hell. From what I learned about these two, there is no way either of them would have left their children. It's just not going to happen. That would be like me leaving my kids. And if anything ever happened to me like this, right away my family would know there's something really bad going on, because I would never leave my kids. Never. Not going to happen. I no way. I can't even be away from them from the time that I am anymore, because they're older now. It's just not. That's not it. And I rule that out immediately. No way. The two things, because this is such a strange story, because they never found anything. They never found, he was in a 2001 Dodge Dakota truck, 50,000 pound truck, and like the FBI guy says on a couple of the shows, Vito, I think his name was, it's true. It's not that easy to get rid of two adults and a 50,000 pound truck. It's just not. They searched the waters for it. They found trucks that even looked like his, but the VIN number was different. It really is mind-blowing. And I think what could have happened. Now, the FBI said murder for hire, which John, the brother, said surprised him. But I've learned that Joe Imbo had attachments to the New York mob. I've learned it from a reliable source. It is what it is. It doesn't mean he killed her or had anything happen, but it does make sense. And even though it was something, everyone alludes to the fact that this was they're going to Abilenes, was this out of the blue thing. How would they know where to go? You know, if you know people and you all have cell phones, it's not hard to give a text saying they're at Abilenes. That's not hard at all. Especially you're so close to South Philly, which is where Richard Petrone had just moved. He worked out of the bakery, the family's bakery in Ardmore, but he just moved to South Philly to be closer to his daughter. The thing I'm thinking is what happened. One of two things. This is my pontification of what happened. That night, they left Abilenes. They went to the truck. I think they did get to the truck. Now, either somebody did know they were there and then pulled them over, took care of them immediately and got rid of them. I mean, yes, somebody might have seen something, but that's why I'm going to tell this Amber Long story. There's a reason for this Amber Long story coming after this. So they're driving down, somebody gets them, kills them, boom. I don't know how contract killings work. I've never been a part of anything like it. They do what they do, and they get rid of them. That could have happened. Now, people said, they could have fallen into the water. I don't really believe that one. All the bridges, first of all, it's near impossible. These bridges outside of even the Petrone, there's just too much stuff around. That would have been really hard to just fall into the water unless you were going to do that, unless you wanted to suddenly commit suicide, which I didn't sound like either of them were on the verge of suicide, and that would have to be a collaboration between both of them. I don't think that happened. Now, there is, back then, especially in 2005, there's a couple places like off-the-wall nooks and crannies, like the Meadows, that had gotten closed around 2005. Like little places where you can park your car and the water is right there. But again, to get into that water, you'd really have to have be on a suicide wish. I can't imagine they were that drunk. Nobody saw them staggering out of the bar. Nobody said I was worried about them the way they were drinking. He would have just fallen into this water. I could see, what if they went into let's talk. Let's just talk for a minute, because they just came together after not having seen each other for a while or going out. They go into this little nook and cranny where maybe there's water, or maybe just nobody was around, and somebody came up to them. That year was the year of carjacking. There were so many cars. All in the news was constant carjacking. For whatever reason, 2004 and 5 was just astounding for the number of carjackings that occurred in Philadelphia. And they would take them to these chop shops where instantly they're gone. They're just getting rid of. Maybe they were there, talking. Somebody came upon them and said, "Give me your car." Richard might have gave up a fight. Bang, bang. They shoot them both, take the car, and get rid of the bodies. It sounds a little far-fetched, but I got to tie this into the Amber Long case here. There was a mother and a daughter. Amber Long and her mother were walking. They just had gotten off the train, and they were headed back to Northern Liberties, which is like a real another up-and-coming place in Philadelphia. Really, they did a fantastic job with changing that whole area around. They were walking on the 900 block of Front Street. Amber Long and her mother. 2 black males. That's the only information ever given to the police. That the mother must have been so out of her mind, she really didn't get any details. Just 2 black males came up to them, said, "Give me your jewelry, your purse, whatever." Now, the mom had given them, I think, her jewelry, but when they went to get the daughter's purse, the daughter either pulled it or wouldn't give it, or it got stuck. Something happened with that purse to cause the guy to shoot Amber Long right in the head. She died right on the scene. And they ran away. They didn't even ever get the purse. The purse was $14, a $14 purse. And they shoot this girl. She dies. That is a tragedy. But the problem with that happened in 2014. They don't have nothing on that. Still, it's 6 years later. Nothing. 2 black males. That's all they got. So if you have the mom who's still alive, who obviously, I have a picture, I'll put it on Instagram for now, or my Twitter page, Bookshop101, that's a tragedy. That is an absolute mess. But the thing is, they never found those people, and that was in front of the mother. So who's to say they didn't get these Danielle and Richard and the truck? I mean, you have a witness, and they never found who killed Amber Long. January 19, 2014 is when that happened. I'm looking in the paper right now. This Sergeant Robert Kohlmeyer, who works in the Philadelphia Police Homicide Unit, they came up on them so quickly, it was a natural reaction for Amber to pull back. They probably had the gun out and fired a shot. I mean, that's unbelievable. They have a $20,000 reward. I mean, her mom is just overcoming grief. I think that's horrible. It was a desolate stretch of Front Street. 2 men approached, grabbed their purses, and she died in Hahnemann Hospital. .22 caliber pistol. That is just devastating. So you have that case, and they just don't have anything. They have absolutely nothing. That's terrible. That ties back into the reason I brought up that case is because, again, I'm trying to go through what people say trying to figure out what could have happened to this Imbo Petrone, because it does drive me nuts. Just gone. They never see nothing. When I read things, people automatically say, well, that somebody had to see something. It's not necessarily true. I mean, things happen constantly, especially in this city. Right now we're having shootings all over the place. And 9 times out of 10, it's drug related a lot, and it's tough to get the person. You have people that don't want to talk because they live there, and then you just have it. I have to say, you see something so much and it starts to become just ingrained in your head that it's just a happening and not as tragic as it truly is. When you see 9 million shootings growing up, and that's everything in the media and the video games. I'm not blaming video games, just saying when you see something again and again and again and again, you become immune to it. Maybe there was 5-6 people out there and saw this truck being pulled over and they got killed, and nobody even knows that it was Danielle, Imbo, and Richard Petrone. I don't think that's so out far-fetched that it was during the time when people were getting carjacked left and right. You wouldn't have found the truck. Yeah, killing 2 people for a truck. When I said this to Homicide, they were like, are you kidding me? Who the heck? It was a 4-year-old truck by then. Nobody's going to want that truck. Nobody's going to pull them over for that truck. So that got knocked down. But to me, I don't know. It could have happened. It could have been inexperienced mean car robbers or car thefts, car absconders. You don't know. A hired hit, that's wild. That would be my next guess. I hate to point fingers because Joe Imbo, he's a shadowy figure in this whole story. And yet, if he has connections, that's a total possibility there. Stranger things have happened. I wanted to bring up that case because it does drive me crazy that they never found anything and they don't know anything. And Amber Long, then when I was talking to Homicide about this case, they said nobody ever caught that Amber Long killer, and I was like, who's Amber Long? And then they told me that, and I'm like, holy crap. Things go on all the time. You never know. That's my take on that. It's a little brief. That's why when I saw this yesterday, I had to tack this on. It is a woman named Suya Kim, and this story is not only terrible story, but there's one comic relief to this story, and that is a security guard by the name of Joe Jones. God bless this guy. He cracks me up. It's a shame because it was during a very tragic story, but he just seemed funny, like he should have been a comedian instead of a security guard. Now this I saw in Unsolved Mysteries, and then when I looked it up, it's true. The only thing on Suya Kim's whole story is the Unsolved Mysteries thread and the Reddit thread. People put forth an interesting thing. Was it a very early Long Island serial killing? I mean, I don't know. It happened in Brooklyn. It is interesting that there's a couple of interesting things about this case. All right, I'll tell you the case as I saw it on Unsolved Mysteries, because that really is the only thing on this case. Suya Kim had come to this country in 1981. She was married to her husband. They were married for 10 years. And this poor guy, he comes on and he is just devastated. What happened was she dropped off the kids one day at the mother-in-law's house, and she wanted to go shop, and she said she would be back. At 8 o'clock, the husband knew something was wrong. By midnight, he was so beside himself, he went to the police. They wrote a missing persons report. In the meantime, there was a security guard named Joe Jones who was watching out, I guess, I think it was the Bedford-Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn. He was in the back, and there was a dumpster where he was securitying. I don't know what you would call that, when his beat, I don't know what the term is, that security guards his little area. So he's watching out. This guy comes driving in and he's trying to dump something into the trash. So he comes up, he says, "Yo, you can't dump there." And now Joe Jones is saying it's episode It's season 6, episode 5. For anybody that has Amazon Prime, you gotta watch that. The whole episode's good, but this one particular part with Soo Kim, the security guards explaining I'm telling you, it just made me laugh. And I hated that I was laughing because it was so devastating, the story. But he just seems like a funny guy. But he said, so the guy is trying to dump something. He says, you can't dump here. So he says, well, what if I give you $20? So he takes the 20. That's what made me laugh so hard. I think this poor guy, oh my God, it just cracked me up. So he takes the 20. The guy dumps it, and then he looks and he says, and the guy had blood on him. So he said, how'd you get all that blood on you? And he said, oh, I got into a fight. And then his words were, so the guy dumps it, and he waits for him, and then he says, and he was looking at me, and I was looking at him. And the guy kind of gives him this, see ya wave as he pulls off. He was a white guy, wore glasses. He had on, one of those 80s shirts, like the little fishnet tanks kind of thing with that blue jogging shorts. Now the depiction in Unsolved Mysteries, he just looks like a nerdy kind of librarian or whatever. But here, when they went to look to see what he dumped in the trash can, it was a body. So he freaks out. He calls an ambulance just happened to be driving by. So they put her in the ambulance, but she had been dead for hours. So this guy, he got a partial plate number. And this is where confusion starts. He gives the partial plate to the investigators. The investigators, unfortunately, have to call Mrs. Kim's husband, who devastatingly identifies his wife's body. He's a mess. He actually moved back to Korea because he was so devastated, and you can feel the guy's pain. He seemed like a very nice man, and my heart bleeds for him. It really does. That's meant very sincerely. The security guard had gotten the plate. He said it was like a blue Nissan. The investigator did narrow down. They went through the partial plate with the blue Nissan, and they get this hit. And they go, and it's a Taiwanese exchange student, a young girl. She has no clue. She used her car at 10 o'clock. They looked through the whole car. There was no blood on it. It wasn't even warm. It really couldn't have been the car. Now, they were questioning that, and when I asked Homicide about that, they said that there was a couple of instances that they had some very interesting things happen, which makes me think back to the guy who killed Soo Kim. Was he out for Asian women? Because it was odd that the woman he killed was Asian, and the woman whose car most resembled the security guards was actually, it should have been the car, but it wasn't, and that was part of the mystery. How did it come up that it was a blue Nissan, but it wasn't the right car when the partial plate was correct? Some people were thinking, well, maybe he got the numbers wrong. I don't think that's what happened. I think that guy, that killer, and I doubt that was his one and only kill. I bet he was a serial killer. I don't know about the Long Island serial killer, but it's just weird. He just kills one Asian woman out of the blue. It's impossible. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely. Okay, when I told Homicide this, they said a couple of times they had some weird things happen. The one time, this is a little different, there was a car accident. So they get the license plate, and it's the same car and everything. So they call, and the insurance company, something had happened with this car, and the cops found out it was involved in an accident. But when all this is going on, the insurance company calls the owner of that car and said, why didn't you report that you were in an accident 2 weeks ago? And she said, I wasn't in an accident 2 weeks ago. So they came out and investigated the car, and it wasn't. It was never hit. But there was a car with that same license plate, same make and model of the car. It was hugely dented. I mean, it was obviously in an accident. So when the cops found that out, they investigated further, and they found out that the guy actually, because the woman was like, oh, that's weird, a couple weeks ago my car got broken into, and they stole the owner's card and the insurance. So what they did was they actually called, said they lost their plate, but they put the wrong VIN number, but for some reason that license plate was issued. They went with the owner's card and the owner's card and the insurance card. So that plate was there on an identical car, but the VIN number was different. And when they discovered that, then they found out the guy who with the accident. I know that sounds a bit confusing, but the point of the story is this guy got a duplicate plate off of a car resembling the other car, the same make and model. It was not the correct car. I hope this makes sense, because that's what the guy could have done, the serial killer guy. It's a little different because in this case the VIN number was different. But I'm wondering if he broke into that car at any time, or maybe it was open and she didn't know it, and maybe he got a plate and was the same car, ran around looking for the same model and vehicle. And when I said that, I said, well, does that happen a lot? And I mean, I was like, Ted, we see all kind of things, so much stuff that's can be done because there's so many scams going on all the time, especially in Philadelphia. We are I think #1 for car scams here. So that was my take on that very intriguing edition of Unsolved Mysteries for the Soo-Ya Kim killing. It was a white guy with glasses, might have broke into that time when he was exchange student's car, got a plate made for his same model and vehicle car, which is a blue Nissan, and then bam, that's why he got away, because it wasn't, who knows what happened with his car, the real insurance and owner's card. That's how I think that guy got away. I think he did something like that. I think it was a well-planned kill. I don't think he went after Soo-Ya Kim, so to speak. I think he just wanted to kill somebody. I think this was a serial killing in the making, that kind of thing. So that's my take on Soo-Ya Kim. It's a great one to watch. Episode 5 on season 6. If only that security guard just cracked me up. The story itself is devastating. The security guard was just so funny. I mean, just because, he's a guy, you could tell he was a little embarrassed when he said he took the $20. It's cool. He wasn't, some people were saying maybe it was a security guard. I definitely don't think it was him. No way in hell. The story's too weird. It's so weird that it rings true. For Danielle, Imbo, and Richard Petrone, I think if they ever found that truck, they would obviously find out what happened to them. Yes, it could be in the bottom of the water somewhere. I just think that somebody nabbed them, and that's in a chop shop, or it was a murder for hire, like the FBI said, and I think it would be the ex-husband, Joe Imbo. That's my personal pontification. This is Debbie Q with the right shoe.